Ladies and gentlemen, Christoph the Polish Geek, and welcome to another You Should Be Watching video. And this time we're talking about DC Animated Universe, more like, or DCAU for short. And this is about all those 90s superhero shows: Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Justice League, Batman Beyond, because I think DC Animated Universe is by far the best comic book on-screen adaptation ever, and nothing ever came or will ever come close. Marvel Cinematic Universe is great, but I don't think it will ever. Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, even during its glory days, cannot match the quality and awesomeness of DC Animated Universe. Even individual shows like Batman the Animated Series or Superman, it doesn't even come close to it in quality and awesomeness. And as much as the Dark Knight trilogy is one of my favorite movie trilogies of all time, and by far my favorite live action comic book movies, even they I don't think are as great as DC Animated Universe. DC Animated Universe is simply a phenomenal masterpiece and one of the best animated shows in history of animation. But in order to truly dive in how super amazing DC Animated Universe is, we probably should dissect every show one by one. So let's get to it. Let's start with Batman the Animated Series, the most famous one and by far the most popular with fans of this universe. Batman the Animated Series alone is an ultra amazing and awesome series and probably the best take on Batman ever. It is literally a comic book come to life. Batman is, by the way, my favorite superhero ever, and I just love how this show captures the Batman spirit so much. Batman is a vigilante who fights criminals in Gotham City, and he lives by his golden rule that he never kills the criminals. And nowhere could it be better done and shown than in this awesome show. The animation is magnificent too, and it captures the atmosphere and the dark tone so well, and it kind of fits very well with who Batman is. And in addition to Batman, we have Batman's iconic villains, including Two-Face, Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, Scarecrow, and of course the king of crime himself and one of the best villains in history, the one and only, the Joker. And the design of the Joker here is amazing. I love how his light purple clown appearance so nicely contrasts with Gotham's overall dark tone. And yet, Joker might be very bright, but he's as evil as you can get. And Mark Hamill does such a phenomenal job voicing him. No longer he returned in the Arkham Asylum video games. Heath Ledger might be my favorite live action Joker, but this animated Joker is my favorite Joker of all time. And of course, besides the Joker and other villains I mentioned, we get some awesome minor villains as well, like Sewer King, for example, or Boss Biggest. And those guys are not the same as the iconic villains you just love to watch. These guys you just outright hate and want Batman to defeat them. And sometimes you kind of wish Batman broke his no-kill rule and actually did kill those guys. That's how evil they are. And the show even did some things that comics have not done before, but they certainly took an inspiration from this show. For example, Harley Quinn, she has not appeared in the comics before the show. She was very much a show original character, but she became so popular that she later very much made it into comics. And no surprise, because she is also one of the biggest highlights of the show. And her relationship with the Joker is just so amazing and so disturbing too. She very much worships and loves him, while the Joker very much abuses her and views her as nothing more than a tool. And another thing that's very original to the show even though later it's became a very much a default story for the comics, is the awesome tragic backstory of Mr. Freeze. Yep, that's right, many people don't know that, but the tragic history of Mr. Freeze and his wife Nora, it actually originated in that Batman the Animated Series, but it was rightfully so loved by all the fans that it basically became the default story for Mr. Freeze. And this is by far one of my favorite episodes in Batman the Animated Series. Like, the story of Mr. Freeze is so tragic, but so amazing and emotional. It's literally one of my favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series. And Mr. Freeze, because of that, is one of my very favorite Batman villains. The action and fight scenes here are awesome. It's always so amazing, it's so fun to watch Batman often fist fight his foes. This show alone deserves to be talked about so much more, but let's now move on onto other shows in this amazing universe. Now let's move on onto Superman the Animated Series, which is certainly much lighter in tone than Batman, but it's kind of the point. Superman has always been much more friendly than Batman, and Metropolis has always been a very different type of city from Gotham. Metropolis, just like Gotham, very much has a life of its own in this series. I love how, unlike Batman, which starts off with Batman already being Batman, Superman starts on Krypton, which of course we all know gets destroyed, and Superman as a baby ends up on Earth. Which means that it starts with the origins of Superman, and later we have a story of how Clark Kent becomes Superman we all know and love. Superman show is a little more serialized than Batman, and it makes sense considering that this is when DC Animated Universe truly kicked off as a whole universe rather than adventures of one hero. And it also led to Justice League, but we'll get to that later. We do get many of the famous Superman characters from the comics. We get Lois Lane, Clark Kent's girlfriend, and also his voice of reason. Like, the perfect example of that is an episode Brave New Metropolis, which basically shows that Lois Lane is Superman's voice of reason and she's almost like an essential part of him. And of course there is Superman's famous arch-nemesis Lex Luthor, and he's really amazing in this show. This is by far my favorite version of Lex Luthor I ever seen, and honestly, I think after the Joker, Lex Luthor is probably my favorite DC villain ever, and it's largely very much thanks to this awesome show and universe. There is Batman Beyond 2. It's Batman many years later, and Bruce Wayne is old and retired, but we get a new young man as Batman, and his name is Terry McGinnis. It takes real talent to make someone other than Bruce Wayne a Batman, but this is also such an awesome and creative concept, and it's probably good. It has never been replicated. It's just too awesome to be done again. Although I wouldn't mind if we did get a movie with Michael Keaton as retired Bruce Wayne and some young actor playing Terry McGinnis. Batman Beyond very much enhances DCAU, which says a lot because that animated universe is already awesome and single best comic book adaptation. Nothing live action or even anything other animated will ever come close to it. Terry McGinnis is a really awesome character, and he gets a lot of his awesome badass moments of his own. And the animation of course is amazing, as is the look of Gotham City in the future. The dynamic between Bruce Wayne and Terry McGinnis is amazing as a mentor and a successor. Let's finally talk about Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, which are a culmination of everything that the DC animated universe has been. They are basically one show, and while most people still think Batman is the best of all those shows, I think Justice League is very comparable, and honestly, I can't decide if I actually prefer Batman or Justice League, because both Batman and Justice League are amazing shows, and the best of all the DC animated universe, which says a lot, because whole universe is amazing. And fun fact about Justice League, I didn't actually watch the show until I was in my boarding school in Rhode Island. I grew up on Batman and Superman, but Justice League I somehow missed out in my childhood. But I binge watched it when I was in my boarding school in Rhode Island, and I was so amazed by that show. If I watched it as a kid, I probably would love the action, but the amazing stories this show offered, I probably would not quite understand. Justice League has everything amazing from the comics, and it has also a lot of its own original stuff as well. We of course have Batman and Superman returning, but we get Wonder Woman too. The Flash and Martian Manhunter appear too. Green Lantern John Stewart is here too, of course. And there is even one more superhero, Hawkgirl. She doesn't seem that popular now, and new movies do not make any references to her whatsoever, but she's an awesome superhero in her own right, and I wouldn't mind if she was revisited someday. Those superheroes are perfect team, and they often fight amazing villains and protect people, but also there is a lot of character drama and development going on between them. Like for example, there is a romance between Green Lantern and Hawkgirl, as well as Martian Manhunter dealing with being the lost Martian, or Wonder Woman having to deal with having to abandon her island despite saving it. Aquaman shows up here too. He isn't part of the Justice League though, he's very much his own superhero, who does try to remain neutral at first, but he also gets an awesome character arc of his own. The villains are amazing. We have Lex Luthor, who continues being awesome as he was in Superman. Darkseid returns, of course, but he's not just Superman main villain. He's the main villain for the DC animated universe as a whole. And there is Gorilla Grodd too, and even the Joker himself makes few appearances, though sadly he has been redesigned. Well, I don't think he looks bad by any means, and certainly much better than he looked in the new Batman Adventures, but I still very much prefer his original Batman the Animated Series design. Oh well, you can't have everything. Still, quantity of villains and characters here is just too big to talk about, so let's move on to some individual amazing stories this series has to offer. There are so many fantastic episodes, they alone deserve to be talked about individually. One of my favorites is the season 1 finale, where Vandal Savage, who by the way is one of my favorite DC villains, goes back in time and takes over Germany, which results in Nazi Germany winning World War II. So Justice League goes back in time and sets things right. I love this so much because I love World War II and I love stories of alternate history. As among others, what would it be like if Germany won World War II? The action in this episode is great. Steve Trevor makes an appearance, and we have characters called the Hawks, and when they appear, it's one of my favorite sequences in the whole DC universe. And bonus cool point, listen to where the leader is from.
We're not from any one country. Andre's from France, Hendrickson's from Holland, Olaf comes from Norway, and I'm Blackhawk from Poland.
Considering the quantity of awesomeness in the show, I will only talk about 2 more episodes, and of course the grand finale. And another amazing episode is the 3-part finale of season 2. In here, Hawkgirl's people arrive on Earth, and that episode has so many twists and turns, as well as so much unexpected stuff happens here. And there is also a lot of character development too, especially for Shayera, Hawkgirl, and she has to choose between loyalty to her people and loyalty to Earth that she is now protecting. The very final episode of Justice League Unlimited, which is a fight with Darkseid and his army, is such an incredible finale, and this episode alone puts any Avengers movie to shame. Avengers Endgame might be my favorite movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's nothing in quality compared to the finale of Justice League Unlimited. Zack Snyder's Justice League is also nothing to that masterpiece. And it is also one of the best TV show finales I ever seen in TV show history. DC Animated Universe is simply perfection. Like, I love Marvel Cinematic Universe, at least during its glory days, not so much now, with the exception of the Guardians of the Galaxy 3. The Dark Knight trilogy is still by far my favorite live-action comic book adaptation ever. And I also love Matt Reeves' Batman, and I do love old Batman, Tim Burton's Batman movies, but absolutely none of it will ever come close to the quality and awesomeness of DC Animated Universe. DC Animated Universe is literally a comic book come to life. And if you feel disappointed currently with the superhero comic book movies, just remember that there is always a DC Animated Universe. And sadly, here in Poland, it seems like only Batman the Animated Series and Superman are on HBO Max. Sadly, Justice League or Batman Beyond are not, but I'm really hoping someday Justice League does make it to Poland on HBO Max, because it truly deserves it. I'm glad we at least have Batman and Superman on there, because truthfully, a lot more people deserve to experience those awesome 90s shows. So, I have to say, I'm really lucky that back when I lived in the United States, I got a chance to get the Justice League on the DVD. See? There we go! It's obvious that in the 90s and early 2000s, people had far more love and passion for comic books, and this is a perfect example. If you are very sad that comic book movies are going downhill, just remember that we always have DC Animated Universe, and DC Animated Universe will always be the king and the greatest, most fantastic comic book adaptation ever put on screen. So, thank you ladies and gentlemen for watching another You Should Be Watching video. Press the like button, and I'll talk to you soon in a movie review. Talk to you then. Bye.